Hello gang, Remix Review Guy here. I review remixes. So if you watched my top 10 remixes of 2024 that I did right at the beginning of the year, you may recall that I said this. It felt like the number of full-length overhauls of albums that were worth noting in 2024 was relatively few, which is why I'm not going to do a best remix albums list on this occasion. Since then, I've refined my research methods somewhat and reviewed some albums from 2024 that I missed at the time, and as a result I now think I have enough stuff to make a decent top 10 list. Granted, it's way past the point when I should have made this video, so I'm not going to labour the point, I'm just going to blast through this one quickly. No elaborate analysis or breakdowns, just a few sentences about why I liked each of the remix projects I'm about to talk about. And yes, before you start, I know not all of my picks here count as albums per se. Some of them are EPs, some of them are deluxe editions of albums that just happen to contain a bunch of remixes. But calling this video the top 10 remix-oriented releases of 2024 just sounds too daft and clunky even by my standards. So here we go, partly for posterity and partly as an experiment in creating much needed short form content for this channel. Here is my list of the top 10 remix albums of 2024. Number 10.
Never knew how much I love you. Never knew how much I care. When you put your...
Kicking off this list with Tweaked by Coppé, a remix of her 2022 album Untweaked. Here we have the story of a veteran of electronica who switched to lounge jazz during the pandemic, only to then hire a bunch of producers to remix her lounge jazz songs back into electronica. If you're into classic Warp Records affiliates and orbiters like Played, Atumtum, Michael Fakesh and Luke Vibert, then this package has a lot going for it, with every artist making a concerted effort to find a fun and inspired middle ground with the sultry, easy listening vibes of the original. Granted, not all of it works, and there are numerous instances where it feels like the remixers apply a somewhat redundant and token electronic effect to Coppé's voice, but it is genuinely refreshing to hear a collection of jazz-infused electronica that doesn't immediately sound like it'd be at home on a Giles Peterson compilation. Number 9. At number 9 we have Side Splits, a remixed edition of Laughing, the 2023 debut album by the singularly named Coffin Prick. If Brian Eno had made an album called Another Red World, there's a chance it would have sounded like Laughing. Not exactly dystopia, but definitely an evil version of utopia. Much like the Coppé album, this one draws from a surprisingly coherent Rolodex of fringe artists for remixes, this time from the worlds of art punk and post-rock, with members of bands like The Boredoms, Melt Banana, Tortoise and Battles weaving their quirky outsider magic, sometimes to a maddening and outright self-destructive degree. Nonetheless, this was one of the most exciting remix albums of 2024 for me, if only because it provided the most unpredictable listen out of anything on this list, so if you have the stomach for that kind of John Peel ruthless eclecticism, then definitely check this one out. Number 8. At number 8 we have Portrayal of Guilt, with the sequel to their album about what happens if you love Jesus just as much as he loves you. There's quite a lot of industrial flavoured remix content on this list, and Portrayal's version of the sound is definitely at the more tongue-in-cheek end, as the sledgehammer gormless names of these albums might suggest. The original's mixture of grindcore, math rock and dark electronics is already pretty playful, but in Lord Hugger 2 here they seem content to farm out their sound to as many practitioners in the world of cartoonishly heavy electronic music as they can. Drum and bass, gabba, industrial hip-hop and nightmare pop all get a look in on this package, with a somewhat glitchy IDM section in the middle that maybe floats a little too far outside the realms of listenability for me. Mostly though, it's a weighty selection of beats with Smeagol retching over it. What's not to love? Number 7. maybe being a little cheeky with the number 7 slot here, as I'm putting both EPs of Marewrew's Yukuk Remixes series here as one catch-all record, despite them being released separately. But to me, the whole experience of these two was inextricably linked, and also, it's my list, I can do whatever the hell I want. Ugh. Remixing a series of rhythmic indigenous songs performed by a Japanese a cappella group is something of a curate's egg, as stylistically you could probably push these recordings in any direction you wanted, even though you probably shouldn't. So gotta give credit to everyone involved with these EPs for forming a largely very coherent and unified sound across these 10 remixes. The first instalment focuses on more strident electronic beat work, while the second focuses more on immersive harmonic dub workouts, but really both of these parts flow together really well, with almost everyone here having the appropriate quirkiness for these rhythmic syllables, as well as a keen ear for sumptuous layering. The pleasures here can be fairly subtle at points, but they are very much worth unwrapping. Number 6.
Songs about drifters, books about the same. They both seem to make me feel a little less insane. Walked on off to another spot.
For number 6, I'm going with the 20th anniversary deluxe edition of Modest Mouse's Good News for People Who Love Bad News. You might have assumed, given that I put one of the tracks from this deluxe package as my top remix of last year, that the overall album might have placed higher in this list. And although I do think the remixes here are pretty darn consistent overall, nothing stood out to me quite as much as the highlight from this project. Nonetheless, these remixes provided a great model for how to transpose rock music composition from the garage to the bedroom, albeit not in a slow jams kind of way. More in how the anything goes sound of modern producer-based bedroom pop can really create an evocative and yet cosy psychedelia. It's a weirdly unassuming package given the often vivacious source material, but to me this provided a particularly poignant before and after journey for a band whose original material was largely generated at the end of their most destructive period. Number 5. Another industrial flavoured remix package here in the form of Chelsea Wolfe's Undone EP, bearing 6 remixes of songs from her repetitively named album She Reaches Out to She Reaches Out to She. Kinda like the Modest Mouse one, these are all reworks of songs from a transitional phase in the artist's life, in this case a sordid and grisly portrait of Wolfe's journey towards sobriety. Each of these remixes takes a very distinctive tack and just absolutely maximises the emotion of its chosen direction, from oceanic trip-hop and utopian light wave to futurist drum workouts and grindcore dancehall. It's a collection of takes that largely zones in on the haunting power of Wolfe's hushed tones, but pulls them from the mental fog of the original, repositioning them into a world of clarity, but not always a clarity that's reassuring or comfortable. Number 4. Number 4 for me is Godflesh's dub reworking of their own album A World Lit Only by Fire, appropriately named A World Lit Only by Dub. I'm a sucker for a good dub collection, but hearing this production ethos applied to what's effectively an industrial doom metal album was a welcome and surprising experience, and at times even a mind-blowing one. Far from being a mere exercise in sparseness and echo, Godflesh get to the roots of their own compositions and absolutely dismantle them with the mixing board, rebuilding them from the ground up and adding an extension on the end. It's one of the only instances in 2024 where I listened to an album of tracks that were all around 9 to 10 minutes long and all of them consistently held my attention. Genuinely, this is a great example of how to apply dub strategies to a non-reggae genre and how to use dub to make big songs sound 10 times bigger. Number 3.
I woke up on the floor, thinking I've never dreamed.
Another anniversary edition at number 3, with Wye Oak augmenting their 4th album Shriek with a series of 5 overhauls. Like Godflesh, this is another remix collection that enlarges the aesthetic universe of the originals, but this time by dialing the bedroom pop feel back and replacing it with a full-blown orchestra. But composer William Brittell goes way beyond making this just a selection of easy string recreations of the original melodic elements, and with the help of the Metropolis Ensemble he leaves no stone unturned in just cramming these compositions with new and striking details, fleshing out an expansive world around these previously intimate songs. If you're a fan of Owen Pallett's violin-based folk rock world building, this package is an absolute must. A fantastic development of some already splendid originals. Number 2.
Check on your friends, they say check on your friends. But what do you do when you can't do enough to have them? There's all between us and tell yourself to stop. We have to wear a system that doesn't care for us.
At number 2, it's Blouse Clubland by Problem Patterns, a remix of their debut album Blouse Club. As I say, Industrial really resulted in a lot of the most exciting remix projects for me last year, but this one was a real revelation. There's already something pretty timely about Problem Patterns' shouty queer Irish punk sound, but the sheer amount of directions their sound was twisted into as part of Blouse Clubland showcased just how versatile and feisty the more electronic end of rock can be. Everything from throbbing melodic techno and 90s indie dance strutting to big room drum and bass and even some Kenny G style hold music found its way into this treasure trove of sonic riches and really helped bring out the playful side of a band who mean business but also like a bit of silliness in the pot. But this remix package pretty much had the lot, consistently engaging sound design, narrative shifting guest verses, a strong flow as a continuous listen, and most impressively for me, most of these remixes sound remarkably accomplished considering how little of a profile many of these remixes had. And before I announce the number 1, a handful of honourable mentions. This is a compilation of remixes from phones spanning well over a decade's worth of releases, so technically I would consider this ineligible for this list, but I thought it was worth giving a shout to anyway, because Phone really has a knack for zoning in on everything that's catchy and delicious about electronica in his remixes. He pretty much never phones it in. Next. Admittedly, I did say in my review of this one that I was a bit disappointed by some of the down-tempo reworkings on this album, at least when listening to them in isolation. But I've got to say, as a full listen from start to finish, this remix album holds up pretty well and has a few more versatile devices to it than the original Black Dog album does.
Winding down a play.
I don't know, I really feel like I'm missing something with the Twig Harper remix of 6 Organs of Admittance. Here we have an almost completely unrecognisable ambient electronic rework of a psychedelic folk album, complete with references to the British national anthem and Earth, Wind and Fire, and there's no sleeve notes or press releases explaining how we got here. Even if I didn't find the Twig Harper version the most exhilarating listen by itself, there's just some level of mystery here that I didn't get from any other remix project last year. And now, without further ado, number 1. I mentioned earlier that I'm not doing a best albums list for 2024, but if I was, I'm 95% sure that Brat and It's Completely Different but also Still Brat would have taken the crown.
Fall in love again and again, 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 fall in love again.
But that said, it was a lot closer than I was expecting. That remaining 5% was me acknowledging that the Problem Patterns remix collection was growing on me, which it continued to do so after recording that video. And I will actually grant that there are albums on this list that I am more likely to dip into casually than I am Still Brat. But this album gave me an experience that I simply haven't got from any other remix album, and that was a remix project that felt inextricably linked to the original. The remixes here were not merely about genre swapping or making the songs more club friendly, they were about adding extra details to the narrative of the original, footnotes, alternative takes, new perspectives. And as much as it might seem like I'm just picking the popular option here for clout, I feel like in execution this managed to be not just the biggest remix album of the year, but also the most unique and fascinating. And as such, I think it highly deserves the slot of number 1 remix album of 2024. So that's my list. If you've not heard any of these before, there are links to all of them in the description for you to check out, as well as links to the originals. Let me know your thoughts about this list or any of the albums on it, or if you thought there were any that should have been on this list that weren't. And also, as someone who generally gravitates towards longer videos, I'd love to know how you all felt about taking a more bam 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 approach to this one, and if you feel that's something I should lean more towards in future. Thanks for watching. This video is over.
Lick it, spit it, pull it to the side and get all up in it. Kiss it, ride it, can I fit it? Charli likes boys, but she knows I'd hit it.